Good afternoon. I think we can do better. It's a little after lunch. Good afternoon. There we go. There we go. My name is Kumar Vellore. I run the data practice at Perforce. Super honor and privilege to be the sponsor of this year's Perforce DevOps and Data event here in Austin. So thanks for that opportunity. It's kind of interesting when the Perforce marketing team reached out to me a week ago and said I was going to be introducing the Jed for the keynote session. I was surprised, number one. I was humbled, and I was asking the question, do I even deserve and am I qualified to be doing that? Well, to kind of like share that, Jed doesn't need an introduction. Actually, I need an introduction for most of you over here. Just to kind of share a little bit more about my background and my Delphix journey, I've been blessed to be affiliated with the Delphix technology for the last 10 years plus. I started my career back in my days at a small retail boutique firm, if you're familiar with the name Macy's, been in business for 130 plus years. I ran the data engineering team for several years, and Delphix was an important technology that we brought into our ecosystem for the data virtualization back in 2012, which is rewinding 12 years ago. And my team had the opportunity to implement Delphix for e-commerce, and then we kind of like scaled Delphix into merchandising, logistics, financials, WMS, POS, everything in the retail chain to kind of like support the application development at Macy's. During that process, actually my passion for the Delphix product started growing, and actually I fell in love with the product, honestly. And I told myself that, I'm going to go and work for the company itself. I wanted to share my love, my passion, the success that I saw at Macy's to many more customers. So I joined Delphix in 2019, and I was running the Southeast customer success team. I had the opportunity to meet with hundreds of customers from Albany, New York, all the way down to Miami, Florida, talking about the Delphix use cases and the value of the Delphix platform. A year ago, a good friend of mine, Kiran, the CEO of Perforce, invited me to come and join Perforce to run the data practice. The only request that I had for the founders and the board of Perforce is, I'm going to bring my baby Delphix along with me, and I'm going to start the practice as a partner over here at Perforce. So looking back now, forwarding like a year now, the investment that we have made with Delphix, with 50-plus certified engineers that we have today to support the Delphix platform, the 30-plus deals that we have signed with Prelude and Perforce team as opportunities in the ecosystem to support the sales pipeline. And we were honored to be the Global Strategic Partner of the Year yesterday at the Partner Summit. So we've come a long way. Thank you. I know this is not about me, this is not about Perforce, but at least I want to share the journey, and Jed doesn't need an introduction. Jed is an entrepreneur of two successful startup companies with Avamar and Delphix. He is the author of the best-selling book, Disrupt or Die. He's a CEO, the founder CEO of Sustainable IT. And I want to share something more on the personal side of Jed, rather than on the professional side, which you all know. I had the opportunity to ride with Jed in Atlanta a couple of years ago. I think it's 3 years ago. And this was right after the RBC event in Atlanta. We were riding to the airport, and I was driving Jed. Honestly, if I had known that day morning that I'm going to be driving with Jed, at least I would have taken my 10-year-old car to a nice wash to make sure it's a clean car, but I was not even prepared for it. I was nervous, but Jed was not. He just got into the car, sat next to me in the passenger seat, and made it ease. I know we had a long day after the RBC event because it starts early in the morning at 7. It was almost like 3-ish in the afternoon, meeting with like several customers. He sat down in his car, and he checked his emails, went through his messaging, and then immediately he called his family. He spoke to his family members, and he had some great conversation with his 2 young kids. He checked on them in terms of their activities. He shared with them his schedule, where he is, and what time he was going to be making home that night. But most importantly, what touched me is that he turned the video call towards me and introduced me to his 2 young kids and said, like, hey, say hello to Mr. Kumar. And wow, I never thought that I would get an introduction to talk to his family members. He ended the call with a loving note, and for the rest 25 to 30 minutes of the car ride, he just engaged in a personal conversation with me, just getting to know about me, where I came from, my family, how my kids are doing. I dropped him off at the airport that day, and it took me like 3 days to process that, right? I wasn't really ready for it. I was nervous, as I am today. And he was, kind of like, being himself. And I've seen Jed more on the professional side. We met with Jed in small sittings, in big meetings, in Zoom and Teams call, but never had that personal side that he kind of like, opened up to me. Most importantly to me, the takeaways from that was a game changer. 3 things. Number 1, the simplicity of Jed. Jed being who he is, at his status, he could have just kind of like, ordered any limousine or an executive car to be picked up. He sat in my 10-year-old car, and he had like no problem with that. Number 2, the empathy that he kind of like, showed to his employee and coworker. He used the 25 minutes of the car ride to get to know me, to ask me some personal questions, to get to know about my kids, to get to know about like, what sports I play, where I came from. That empathy is so important. And number 3, which is the most important thing to me, is the compassion that he was kind of like, showing as part of his parenting to his kids. He taught the kids the humbleness, the respect to talk to people, and to kind of like, acknowledge. That is more important in today's world that we live in. Technology is advancing so fast, and we are living in an era of AI, right? There's so much transformation. But the 3 things that, I still kind of like practice today as a result of that 30 minutes car ride that I learned from Jed: simplicity, empathy, and parenting. So with no further delays, I'm super honored and privileged to invite the entrepreneur, the best-selling author, the CEO and CEO founder, Jed Yueh. Thank you, Jed.
Well, thank you, Kumar, for the longest intro I've ever had for a talk. All right, so today we're going to talk about the founder's mindset. Now, many of you have probably read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. In the book Outliers, he talks about the 10,000-hour rule. It takes you 10,000 hours to master almost any kind of domain, like playing the violin. And in the book, he talks about a really specific year, 1955, when Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and a lot of the tech titans were all born. His point in calling out that year is that that was a year that gave all of these individuals just enough time to amass 10,000 hours of expertise to take best advantage of the rise of the compute era and then the subsequent internet era after that. And so what he's telling you is if you want to innovate, if you want to really be a master at any domain, you need to spend 10,000 hours of work in order to succeed. But in my experience, that wasn't true at all. I was an English major in college, and I taught high school before I invented my first software product, which turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar product. I had maybe 500 hours of total expertise and training before I came up with that idea. So I believe in the incredible lightness of disruption, and so should you. You shouldn't create ceilings or limitations that stop you from innovating and doing the things that can really change your life or make a difference in many people's lives. One of the big reasons that I think it's so easy to innovate today is what I call fintech. There's this increasing lever arm that's been built over the last several decades that makes it easier than ever to innovate. So if you look at the 1990s when you had the invention of the internet and then the open sourcing of Linux, and then you fast forward to the mid-2000s when you have a bunch of these really big platforms that were developed. You had AWS launch the cloud. Git was invented to help open source developers more easily share their open source code. You also had GitHub, and then you had the big mobile platforms. You had Android and iOS. And then fast forward to today, when you can buy any advanced AI service and all kinds of other services by the drip in the cloud, there are so many technologies that anyone can bring to bear to enable their idea, and all of those make it easier than ever to just come up with a great application idea and change the world. So let's look at the Facebook example. How long do you think it took Mark Zuckerberg to invent and then code up Facebook? Any guesses? 2 weeks. It took him 2 weeks to code up Facebook, and he didn't come up with the idea at all. If you go to Harvard, they give you this leather-bound book that we all call the Facebook, which basically has all of your classmates' pictures and a few facts about them in the book. But he didn't even just take a physical book and put it on the internet. He stole the idea from the Winklevoss twins. It wasn't even his idea to begin with. And it only took him 2 weeks to code the entire application before it went viral. How did he know how to build a giant tech company that eventually helped destroy the world? He didn't know at the beginning. It went viral, and all these resources came to him. So Peter Thiel was the first outside investor in Facebook, and he had already taken PayPal public. He brought all of his frameworks, knowledge, resources, all of his expertise to help Mark build his empire. In my case, Avamar, the idea was quite simple. Back in 1999, all companies used to back up the same data over and over again onto tape media. But if you looked at the consumer world, in the consumer space, you already had MP3 players aplenty, and you had the launching of TiVo. So they were taking cassette tapes and putting them on disk and transforming those subcategories or industries. And so that was my bet. My bet was that the enterprise tape backup industry would have to move to disk. And that's exactly what happened over the course of the next 10 years. For my second software company, I decided to move from Irvine, California, down in Southern California where I started Avamar, into Innovation Central, into Silicon Valley itself. Silicon Valley is a really special place. And it's different than almost anywhere else in the world. One of the lessons that I learned at Avamar was that it's very hard to scale a tech company if you can't find resources, people who've built tech company after tech company after tech company readily available where you have your offices. So for Delphix, I moved up to the Bay Area. And for Delphix, it was actually pretty easy for me to come up with an idea as well. It actually solved the problem that we created at Avamar. So I created my own problem, which led to the solution or the new technology company. At Avamar, I had a lot of customers say, hey, Jed, you've packed all this backup data onto disk, but I still have to restore it into all these different environments: development, test, QA, stage, training. And I have to operate in all these environments, and the data is mostly the same. Can you help me with that problem? And so that's how the idea for Delphix came to be. Now, Silicon Valley is an interesting place. When I moved up to Silicon Valley, I lived in Menlo Park, and within a 15-mile radius of where I lived, we had 6 of the top 10 tech companies in the world at that time. So just a huge density of the world's most successful technology companies. This is based on when I lived there. And right down the street, you had a huge concentration of angel and VC funds down on Sand Hill Road, because all of the money that's made in these giant tech companies comes pouring back into investment. And that creates the world's largest and most competitive startup ecosystem. And this ecosystem has company after company after company, all staffed to capacity with people who can help you build out your idea and company. And then you have feeder schools like Stanford and Berkeley that keep fueling this cyclone, this self-reinforcing system. And my point of all this is that there are a lot of authors out there who will tell you that you need to go through trial and error in order to come up with a great idea. But I think it's actually very, very repeatable. So there's a very popular book, The Lean Startup, that's been rolled out at many companies, both tech companies and companies across all industries. And in it, he talks about iterating, build, measure, learn, get to your MVP, and then you pivot or you persevere based on how well you do. The problem with iterating fast is survivorship bias and also a small sample bias. And the contrast to it would be highly repeatable innovation. So survivorship bias. If you just look at the people who survived, those companies that had to iterate and pivot and succeeded, and you only focus on those, it looks like a great way to succeed. There are plenty of companies that didn't know what they were doing out of the gates. Then they discovered their path, came up with their product, and became successful. But for all of those that succeeded, there are hundreds and thousands that did not. And so you're just not looking at the entire picture. So what I want to talk about is why innovation is highly repeatable, how you can do it with very little risk, and why people can do it over and over again. PayPal is a great example of how repeatable innovation can be. If you look at the early employees and founders of PayPal, they went on to create an incredible array of successful technology companies over and over and over again. And they were able to do it because they learned how to be disciplined entrepreneurs, not because they iterated and tried over and over again. They knew what they were doing. A great example of a tree of innovation is platform transference. If you look at taking all the applications that were dominant in enterprise data centers and moving them into the cloud, that was really the journey of building all these great SaaS companies. Everybody here had all these applications already running in their data center. You didn't have to come up with the application idea. You just needed to move it to the cloud. And every one of those crossed over and became a successful company. In hindsight, anybody could have built those companies who saw those applications sitting in the data center. It's not about iteration. It's about a great idea well executed. In The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen talks about bottoms-up disruption, and he positions bottoms-up disruption as if it's the only way to build innovation. This is the way that companies innovate. And there are certainly examples of companies that have innovated from the bottom up. But all of you sit in companies that are already successful and dominant in your industries. And if you look at other paths to success and innovation, you can take an example from Steve Jobs. He didn't go from the bottom up. He came over the top, built a superior product with superior design, going after the high end of the market, and completely dominated the market. And that has been done by many other companies as well. Another book that's pretty popular out there that helps you think about leadership and leadership with respect to innovation is Good to Great by Jim Collins. In Good to Great, he talks about finding the who before the what, finding the right people, about being a level 5 leader, a great servant leader to your people. But look at the tech leaders who've built many of the world's biggest companies. They are not servant leaders. They're not even good people. But what they do have is command of what I call the product trinity. On a day-to-day basis, they are product managers who define requirements for the most important products in their organization. They are heads of user experience and design. They go in and they micromanage all kinds of parts of their products. Jeff Bezos is famous for wanting to get every pixel right in his applications for Amazon, both on the web and the mobile app. And then their CTOs, they actually decide on the technologies that go into their products. Now, they have people who run all of these functions, but that's what they do for their most important products. They are product CEOs. Now, another book by Simon Sinek talks about starting with why, starting with your purpose. And then after you find your purpose, you find your how and your what, and you finally know what you're building, or what you're going to do, or what company you're going to start. But I believe in the opposite, or a whole different set. So I believe in starting with what? Come up with your product idea, the idea that you have that can change the world. Then that will define what your purpose can be, the why. That will help you find your why. And ultimately, the why helps you attract the who, all the people that you need to build your company and to build out your idea. For Delphix, our why is sustainableIT.org. Now, Delphix, we consolidate data by 10x everywhere we're deployed for applications. So we reduce the environmental impact of data everywhere that companies use us. But we want to do more than just sell our product. We wanted to have an impact broader than just the product that we sold. And so we started sustainableIT.org. if you look at what's happening in the world today with rising greenhouse gases and temperatures, it's actually degrading health and increasing mortality all around the world. And if you look at NVIDIA's stock price as a proxy for CPU usage by IT, it is only getting worse. We were on a path to IT consuming, over the next decade, 1% to 2% of all electricity consumption. Now we're on a path to 10 to 20%. It has skyrocketed, just like NVIDIA's stock price. And it's even worse than that. There's a cyclone effect that's at work. So GenAI today is being used to help build the next generation of CPUs for GenAI. That increases the power and the range of what you can do with GenAI. That creates more demand, more use cases, more success with GenAI. And that ends up consuming more and more chips. So it's only getting worse. This cycle is accelerating. So we encourage everyone to think about sustainability as one of the key reasons, one of the key things that you need to do and focus on as a leader. So our why can also be your why. And this is about having IT leaders take charge of sustainability from the technology leadership position. We all deserve to have purpose. I hope you find yours, and I hope you're able to find your innovation and disruption as well. Thank you.